So tonight I'm going to be talking about a certain event that took place at the old San Francisco Mint. The year is 1901. As I usually do, I will first present a little introduction about why on earth there's a mint there. As everybody I hope knows, 1848 found the discovery of gold in Sutter's Mill, and the world rushed in. People coming on clipper ships from New York, they would have had to go around Cape Horn. So that was not going to be a very fast trip, no matter how fast their clipper ships were. So why do we need a mint here? In 1852, the 4 operating United States mints were in Philadelphia, New Orleans, Dahlonega, Georgia, and Charlotte, North Carolina. The Dahlonega and Charlotte mints were established to deal with the gold rush that happened in that part of the country in the 1830s. So they only made gold coins. New Orleans made gold and silver, and Philadelphia, of course, made everything. So in 1854, the Treasury Department bought a building on Commercial Street that had been used as a mint by a private company, and they turned it into the United States Mint. And here are, fanciful pencil drawings of what was going on in there. The turning the gold into ingots, stamping onto the coins. This is what it looked like in the 40s, and this is the plaque that's out front today. The building itself, commercial between Montgomery and Kearny. It's about a half a block and around the corner from Portsmouth Square. That was sort of the center of everything at the time. The building itself was heavily remodeled in 1874 when the mint moved out. It served as a sub-treasury for a while. There are still the vaults in the basement that are like it. Then everything was destroyed in 1906. So this was the replacement building. And currently it is the home of the Museum of the San Francisco Historical Society, with the original vaults still down in the basement, and you can see them there. Alfred Mollett, who was the architect for the Treasury Department, was not impressed with the building. The present building is a disgrace to the government. It is so inconvenient, overcrowded, and unsuitable that I can find no language graphic enough to describe it or strong enough to condemn those under whose management such a building was purchased and converted into a mint. I don't think he liked the place.
A new one.
But not when he was going to design a new one, exactly. So the little red dot is where the first mint is on Commercial Street. The green space is where the second mint was set to be built. The construction began in 1869, and the second mint was opened on November 5th of 1874. So that's the background of why this building. And this was state of the art at the time. It was so well built that it survived the 1906 earthquake with very little damage. And the fact that it was situated on a artesian well or artesian spring that fed a cistern in the basement helped it survive the fire as well. But that's another topic for another time. So now we're fast forwarding to 1901. At that point, the superintendent was Frank Leach, who was a very well-respected manager of the building and the crew. He was considered the hero of saving the building in 1906. There was unparalleled productivity. The wastage of raw material to actual coinage produced was lower than any other facility in the United States Mint system. And security was so high that there were no attempted break-ins, other than one other story that I can tell, or at least that is the report. What you read in the book and what really happened is not always the same thing. So what were the problem factors of the Mint in 1901? First was the Bland-Allison Act of 1878, whereby Congress required the Treasury to buy between $2 and $4 million worth of raw silver every month and required them to turn them into silver dollars. So there were a lot of silver dollars made. The Sherman Silver Purchase Act of 1890 upped the stakes by doubling the amounts to between 4 and 8 million, and yet more silver dollars were produced, many of which never saw the light of day after being made. As a result, millions of surplus silver dollars were never released into circulation. New vaults had to be added to the San Francisco Mint. There had been no vaults in the basement in the beginning, but in 1884, they started having to convert areas into vaults. And the upstairs vaults that were used for their day-to-day operations were filled to capacity. So things were very tight in that way. Here's a drawing from the period, and these are each spaces where that were converted into vaults at various times. The ones that are numbered 3 are the ones that were ordered or were converted first. And by the 1920s, they had to build a 2-story vault in the middle of the courtyard to hold all of the silver that was in storage. Okay, so how did the public interact with the Mint? The main thing that the public was interested in was using it as an assay office, meaning that they would bring their precious metal in to have it evaluated, to have it valued, and then come back and get the monetary value for it. So what they would do is they would walk in the door and go to the office of the Mint. There's a picture of the office of the Mint. You can see there's a vault next to it. This is where they would bring their raw gold and silver. The receiving clerk would measure what they had brought and give them a receipt for what they had deposited. Then it was sent off to be assayed. A couple days later, the public would return with the receipt. They would go to the office of the assistant treasurer, or the cashier's office, as it was also known, and they were paid their fair value for the amount that they had deposited, as pured, as if it had been pured. And you'll notice over on the right, there's a vault right off the office. That's that vault over in the corner. That's not the original door, needless to say, but only the chief cashier had the combination to the vault. Inside the vault, there were pigeonholes to hold sacks of double eagles or other denominations, but many of them were double eagles, and those are the ones we're concerned about now, meaning $20 gold pieces. This way, by having one sack per cubbyhole, they could do a quick inventory every day and see, just by looking how many cubbyholes were empty, and that would tell you basically what had happened during the day. However, due to the lack of storage everywhere in the building, there were additional sacks stacked on top of hand trucks that were placed in front of some of the pigeonholes. June 29th, 1901 was the day of the end of the year fiscal coin count, where they checked what was actually physically in the building with what was on the books. The cashier's vault was supposed to contain 1,515 sacks of double eagles, but it actually contained 1,509. So since each sack contained 250 double eagles weighing about 20 pounds, each had a value of $5,000. So the value of the 6 missing sacks was $30,000. They recounted the entire inventory. They reviewed all of the production and distribution records. They couldn't find any discrepancy other than those 6 sacks from that one vault. So the conclusion was that someone had stolen them. First news about it, every nook and cranny in the Mint was searched, but without avail. 2 suspects, the chief cashier who had the combination to the vault, and the chief clerk, who had occasional access to the vault, usually if his boss wasn't in the office that moment. So now the word gets out from Washington Times on July 4th to the New York Times on July 5th, to the New York Tribune on July 6th, to the Atlanta Constitution on July 7th, to the LA Times on July 7th as well. On Friday, July 5th, both Cole and Dimmick were suspended. They were required to return to work every day, but did not have any duties. And they were on constant surveillance, either while they were at the job or when they were away from the job. Eventually, Walter Dimmick became the prime suspect. He had been the chief cashier, the job that Cole had taken from him until 1899. He was very unpopular with all of the other Mint employees, other than security, apparently. He had very strained relations with Superintendent Leach and his boss, Cole. He was alleged to be a gambler, and he was rumored to be living above his means, above what would be expected from somebody working at his salary at the Mint. So all eyes turned to Walter Dimmick. Other reasons. Over his time at the Mint, there were numerous minor irregularities in the counts for him. He was suspected of stealing small amounts of money from pay envelopes. He was caught trying to forge Superintendent Leach's signature. He had been accused of stealing $1,300 in February of 1901. He had been advised to seek other employment, and he was permanently dismissed on August 1st of 1901. Meanwhile, the San Francisco Call had a little article from his hometown of Santa Barbara, where people said, "Oh, he was a wonderful person. He was an exemplary man. He was the son of a doctor down there. He had been a bank clerk." So lots of people stood up for him long distance. On August 10th, they issued a warrant for his arrest. Secret Service, of course, was involved. So the warrants were issued, and he was arrested on Friday the 12th. Because he could not furnish bail, he was put into jail, arraigned and taken to county jail, and the same familiar picture of Dimmick. First charge was for the embezzlement of $498.37 from funds that were earmarked for supplies, but apparently were not used for that purpose. The misappropriation of $1,300 of funds in February, and the theft of $30,000 from the cashier's vault in sometime before June 29th. His first trial, he headed to trial in October of 1901. Talk about speedy justice. Things don't move that fast anymore. This was just 3 months after the theft was discovered. He was tried on the embezzlement charges. They kind of left out the $30,000 because they didn't have any evidence, but they had more evidence for the other two charges. He was convicted for presenting a fraudulent voucher to Cole. That was the pardon me, that was the $400 discrepancy, but there was no verdict on the large charges. And he was sentenced to 2 years hard labor in San Quentin, which he got to serve almost immediately. He had a second trial in November of the same year. So just a month later, this was the charges for the other embezzlement cases. November, he was convicted of those additional charges, but there was no verdict reached in the $30,000 theft. Apparently they tried cases a little differently than we think of them now. And he was sentenced to additional 2 years of hard labor in San Quentin and levied a fine of $730.97. With $30,000, he should be able to pay that. Yeah. He was reindicted in January of 1902. The trial was held in April of 1902. There was no verdict. There was a hung jury. It was declared a mistrial, and there was lots of hubbub around about his lawyers having tampered with the jury, with the prosecution lawyers and the Secret Service tampering with the jury, and suppression of evidence. So that was all reasons to kick out the trial. Went to trial for the last time in 1903. First, he had filed a writ of habeas corpus with the US Supreme Court, which denied it. So he had to stay in jail. Trial was held in April, and he was found guilty and sentenced to an additional 5 years hard labor in San Quentin. Probably one of the mitigating factors was that nobody could point to the $30,000. Where was it? While he was in prison, he maintained his innocence the entire time he was in prison. His wife was devoted to him and visited him frequently. He was considered as a prisoner to be amiable but seldom sociable. And in 1908, there was an effort to have him pardoned by President Roosevelt. Didn't really matter. He ended up being released from prison on November 30th, 1909. He was sentenced to a total of 9 years, served a little over 8 years. And he was alleged in this article to have been pursuing a law career in San Francisco, sort of appropriate. He would, now want to defend people in his situation. The rest of his life, he lived in obscurity. I never found a death record for him or any other information after this one article. I'd love to know what happened. There was another Walter Dimmick but he was born in 1884, so that was way too late for this guy. So how did he do it? It's possible that there was a stolen or compromised combination. He could have just observed the clerk entering the combination or helped him reset the combination at some point, because Cole apparently had trouble dealing with resetting the combination. Also, because he was so friendly with the security staff, they did not go through thorough inspections when he would leave the building. Another thing that came to light later was that in the initial investigation, the Secret Service interviewed Market Street Railway conductors, and they showed him a picture of Dimmick, and one of them said, "Oh yeah, that's the guy who works at the Mint. I remember this one time he brought this very heavy suitcase on and left it in the middle of the aisle. When I tried to move it, he got very angry with me and wouldn't let me move it. And and then he just got off. But he was on the streetcar all the time. Anyway, so those little hand trucks, the specie trucks, were located in front of the cubby holes. So the theory was that he could reach underneath the truck, pull out one of the sacks from the bottom cubby hole, so it wouldn't be noticed during the daily inspections, because it was just assumed that those were all there. And that would be how he would sneak out 6 sacks.
And was there ever confirmation that the 6 empty pigeonholes were on the bottom row?
I don't know. I actually don't know. That's a very good question. That's a question I never asked. I just assumed it wasn't. But all I know was that the count didn't match. But that would be a good point. So where did the gold go? This is the hidden gold part. Dimmick never revealed the location of where he would have stashed it. Circulating coins, as we know, cannot be traced. There's no, unlike paper money, there's no serial number on it, so it could be anywhere. Since there were 1,500 coins missing out of the almost 6 million coins produced, that's less than 0.1%. So, you know, you're going to find plenty of 1901S, well, not anymore, but you could find plenty of 1901S double eagles out in the world, and you would have no way of knowing whether that was it. Over the years, there were several suspected finds. Perhaps the most famous and most salient to us recently was the Saddle Ridge Hoard find in the Sierra back in, I think, 2013, where they found something on the order of 1,500 double eagles in coffee cans buried under the soil.
But there were a number of dates on that, not just.
I was about to say that. You're interrupting my talk. So no, they were all before 1893, I think. So, and the ones that were in the vault were definitely 1901. The mint was not in the habit of holding on to coins that it had minted 20 years earlier, other than the silver dollars in the downstairs vaults. Yeah. But, you know, the coins that they handed out in the treasurer's office or in the cashier's office were recently minted coins. So they were all dated 1901. So that did not happen. So we don't know whatever happened to it.
Well, if the guy, if you lose track of him after he leaves jail, I mean, at the moment, 30,000 was a good, it continues to be a good bunch of money. I would say that 30,000 bought him or allow him to have anonymity or to disappear. So
absolutely,
that's where your 30,000 bucks went.
Right,
helping him disappear. And
there was a slide earlier which got skipped over that he was seen in the company of a famous society matron who disappeared 3 days before the discovery was made. And his wife, but this was, you know, and it was all speculated that he was having an affair with this woman and she had taken the money and all of that, but you know, you could never prove anything.
Do we have a death certificate?
We don't. I was looking for. Oh, for the wife?
Yeah.
No. I mean, I looked for Dimmick's.
Right.
No.
No.
Didn't look that carefully.
Follow the wife.
Instead of chercher la femme.
So if you couldn't find him anywhere, it means that he got the money and then fled to another country.
Well, that's a good theory. Maybe to Panama or something. Costa Rica. Do you have a Dimmick in your background?
I will have to double check on that. FamilySearch.org.
Right. So that's basically the end. This is one of the series of The Secrets of the Old Mint, which is based on the Hardy Boys, because I was reading the Hardy Boys like crazy when I started collecting coins when I was like 8 years old. So once I started to do this particular project, that jumped into my head. So I just modified various things. We already had done the Great Cornerstone Mystery.
So is that a real Hardy Boys story? The Secret of the Old Mint?
Hunting for Hidden Gold.
Hunting for Hidden Gold is, and Secret of the Lost Tunnel is, but there's others I modified. That's the Great Airport Mystery.
I still have a lot of those.
And this is the Secret of the Old Mill. Anyway, so there ends the presentation. Thank you very much for your brief attention. Michael, you have a question.
Yeah, so were the bags in the cubby holes sealed?
Yes, they had tags on.
And so you couldn't go in and just steal like $1.
No, you had to steal the whole sack. Well, you could empty the sack, but they didn't leave the sack behind. That would be evidence. So they never found any of the bags.
So
of
probably only one
tags.
sack was ever opened at once.
Right.
I have another question about the location of the vault.
Yes.
I think I know which one. Are there two of these vaults?
In the mint is as it currently is. If you go to the right when you come in the door, that's the cashier's office, and the mint in the corner. I mean, the vault in the corner is what remains of that vault. It was heavily modified when they redid the mint in the 70s, And that's where actually the mint kept their stash of coins and everything that they sold over the counter during that time.
So Jason,
Yeah.
those vaults, in each one of the rooms, the room you go into it first and then the one where you pick up their money.
Mhm.
There are two vaults. There's one that you enter from that room and then that's adjacent to another vault, but there's no door between those two vaults, right?
Not originally. I mean, when things got modified, a whole bunch of vaults were ripped out.
Yeah, but in the original plan.
In the
it
original,
shows that
in the original plan, no, they were separate because
They're
one
separate,
was
yeah.
for the incoming, one was for the asset. I mean,
So-
basically every room where something was processed had a vault so that the day's work could be locked away.
I always wondered about that because you'd think that maybe there would have been a door between the two vaults, but there
No.
wasn't.
No.
Okay.
Any questions from anybody out in the real world?
Dimmick never confessed.
He had children, I mean, oh, I see.
Herb had a question. There you are, Herb.
Yes.
Did he ever confess?
said-
No. No deathbed confessions. Nobody else ever confessed.
No one ever saw him on the deathbed.
Right. So who knows? He might have made a deathbed confession, but that's between he and his creator.
Did he remain with his wife the whole time?
Yeah, she remained with him. He was in prison. He had no choice. But she stuck by him the whole time.
But you don't know afterwards.
I do not, no, I know nothing after he was released
He
from
could have
prison.
gone off with some lovely young woman.
He could have gone off with the society matron. He could have, he could have killed them all. I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah.
What was the
1909.
society matron's name?
Pardon me?
The society matron, what was her name?
They did not reveal her name. This was like a blind item in Herb Cain. So it's taken with a pound of salt or a full salt lake.
So like, how about children?
We don't know. There was something I saw that suggested that he and his wife had a son while he was in, not before all of this happened. And
Right.
so, but nothing much was discussed about that in
And
any
maybe
of the
that was the
materials.
Dimmick that you found that was born in the 80s.
Possibly. Anyway. So
How old
I,
was he when he got caught doing this, or in theory?
I want to say he was in his 40s, but I don't actually know because I can't find any, other than these newspaper clippings, there's no records of him.
Sure.
He was, the Santa Barbara connection, which I just discovered while I was updating things for this time, that gives me something to work on because it has his father's name. So, that gives me.
Well, if he was in his 40s in 1901, then that would put the time frame about right for the one born in the 1890s.
Yeah, and again, 40s is speculation on my part. I mean, that's my sense because he had had a prior job. He had been the chief cashier in the late 1890s. So, he wasn't a newly minted worker.
Was $30,000 more than he would have made in 8 years?
Yes, undoubtedly.
He did all right.
He did, if he did it. I mean, again, it was all on circumstantial evidence and speculation. There was no physical evidence linking him to the money. And there still isn't that we know of. Anyway.